All right, let's talk about breakfast. If you've ever felt completely lost trying to figure out the right thing to eat in the morning for weight loss, you are so not alone. Today, we're going to cut through all that confusion. We're going to unpack some really fascinating science that reveals this surprising sweet spot for your first meal of the day. So yeah, let's get right into it.
So let me ask you this straight up. Think about what you ate this morning, or what you usually eat. Is that meal actually helping you? Or could it be, secretly hurting your weight loss goals? It's a much bigger deal than you probably think.
For years, the whole debate has been stuck between two extremes, right? On one side, you've got the people who say less is more. Maybe they skip breakfast altogether. And on the other, you have the go big or go home crowd, convinced that a huge meal is the only way to stay full. But what if they're both kind of wrong?
Well, that is exactly what a group of researchers in Spain wanted to find out. They put together this really groundbreaking study that just moves right past all those old arguments and gives us a completely fresh way to think about our morning meal.
And here it is, the core, myth-busting idea they came up with. The secret to a breakfast that actually helps you lose weight isn't about skipping it or just blindly cutting calories. Nope, it's about hitting a very specific optimal amount. There's a real target to aim for.
Now, before we get to the actual numbers, let's just quickly look at the science here. Because this wasn't some tiny online poll. This was a serious 3-year-long study published in a major journal. They followed almost 400 adults in Barcelona, all of whom were obese and had metabolic syndrome, which is just a group of conditions that raises your risk for things like heart disease and diabetes. So these findings are incredibly relevant for anyone trying to manage their weight.
Okay, so what is this magic number? This is where the research gets super practical. Let's break down exactly what this calorie zone looks like.
And here it is, the sweet spot. What the researchers found was that the ideal breakfast should make up about 20 to 30% of your total daily calories. It's a simple percentage, but it gives you a super clear target and kind of takes all the guesswork out of your morning. So what does that actually look like in terms of, food? Well, for most women, we're talking about a breakfast that's somewhere between 400 and 600 calories. And for most men, that target range is a little higher, between 500 and 700. Think of it like a Goldilocks zone. Not too small, not too big, but just right.
Let's put this into perspective with some real food. A simple bowl of porridge, while it seems healthy, might actually be too low, coming in around 200 calories. On the other end, a full English breakfast at 900 calories, that completely blows past the target. But here's the shocker. Something like a sausage and egg McMuffin at about 423 calories lands right in the sweet spot for women. Now, obviously, that's just one example. You could totally hit that same number with, say, 2 scrambled eggs, a slice of whole wheat toast with avocado, and some fruit.
But you know what? Here's probably the most counterintuitive part of this whole thing. You'd think that eating less for breakfast would always be better for weight loss, wouldn't you? Well, the data show that having too little can actually backfire. Big time. I mean, the results were pretty shocking. The people in the study who ate either too little or too much for breakfast, they had a waist size that was 2 to 4% larger than the people who stayed in that sweet spot. Just let that sink in for a second. Eating too little was linked to a bigger waistline. Wild, right? And it wasn't just about waist size. Missing that sweet spot on either end of the spectrum was also linked to a higher BMI and, maybe more worryingly, higher levels of fat in the blood, which we all know is a major risk factor for heart disease. So we're seeing a clear, measurable impact on health here. So why? Why does eating too little lead to these bad outcomes? Well, the researchers have a pretty solid theory. A tiny breakfast just doesn't keep you full. And what happens when you're not full? You're way more likely to start snacking later in the morning, which just completely torpedoes your calorie goals for the day and, well, adds up around your waist.
Okay, so let's start to tie all of this together. We've figured out the how much, that calorie sweet spot. But there's one more really crucial piece to this puzzle that we've got to talk about, and that's the what.
Because here's the catch, and it's a big one. You can't just hit your calorie number with junk. The study was crystal clear that people who ate unhealthy breakfasts, stuff high in fat, salt, and sugar, they also had worse health outcomes, even if their calorie count was low. So quality is absolutely non-negotiable.
So, the game plan here is actually pretty simple. Step 1, figure out your personal calorie sweet spot, that 400 to 600 or 500 to 700 range. Step 2, fill those calories with good, high-quality, nutritious food. And step 3, enjoy a breakfast that actually keeps you feeling full and helps you power through the morning without reaching for those unhealthy snacks.
And that pretty much brings us to the end.
Armed with this science, you now have a totally new way to look at your morning meal. It's a chance to maybe rethink your routine and make a small change that could have a really big impact. So the only question left is, what's going to be on your plate tomorrow?